Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you all are having a good Friday. And here it is at the end of the day. I just thought I'd go live. We've had some great calls this week. And to round off the week, I thought I would just, say thank you to the people that were on to share some of their tips with us this week. And on one of those calls this week, we talked a little bit about the ability that you have to choose your clients and choose who you want to work with. You just need a way to determine and reveal who the real people are that are a match to the people you want to work with and who the imposters and fakes are, right? And so that's why we do so many things to try to figure it out. Ask questions, go through an appointment process, a qualifying process, all of that. So I was rounding out the day here, getting ready to head out and go on down to Bass Pro Shop. I got a gift card, so I got to go get something down at Bass Pro Shop. But I was going through some paperwork here, and I found this piece of paper that has some gold on it, although it looks like just a white piece of paper. You know, as some of you may know, I spent a long time in the investment business, nearly 20 years raising capital from investors for private placements, direct participation programs, and different investment ventures in Texas, Oklahoma, in this neck of the woods. A lot of those have to do with the oil business. Most of the oil wells and production in the United States is actually privately funded. It's not companies like Exxon or the big seven that you would think of. It's most of it funded by investors like you and I, who are looking for diversity, income, and tax deductions. So, what that would look like is we would call investors all day long. They had to be accredited investors by qualification, which meant you had to have a net worth of $1 million or more, or have had made $300,000 a year consecutively and expect to do so this year. So you had to make sure somebody was qualified under that criteria before you could really even talk to them, definitely before you could send a prospectus. And if you guys have ever received that in the mail, you know what I'm talking about. Even if you bought some stock and you elected to get stuff in your mailbox, you might have received a prospectus prior to a vote or something that might have been taking place for shareholders. So, we would send those out. Ultimately, I would say, Jeff, you should have this by tomorrow. FedEx will drop it off and I'll give you a call then. We'll go through it. And if everything makes sense, we'll go ahead and write the check to get you involved. Sound great? So that's what that environment looked like. In you can imagine it's a difficult sale. Most of these people would never see, meet, or venture out to the field to see their investment. Most of them were older at the time. I was in my 20s. Most of us in the office were in our 20s. So you have that going on, just a big age difference, which can work to your disadvantage when you're working with some older people. They may not think that you know what you're talking about. They may not want to listen to you. You might have some issues just measuring your wallet against theirs, all those kind of things. But we, over the years, created tons of content. So long story short, this piece of paper that I found is called PR Flow. All right. So what would we prospecting, if you're circle prospecting or something like that, that's basically what we called PRing. I'd have a list of names and phone numbers on a piece of paper, and they were supposed to be accredited investors, and we'd call through them and do what we called a PR. So PR that guy, or sometimes we would have people who would work for us that were just PR people, kind of like an ISA. They would do all the heavy work, so to speak, doing all the calling. And when they found somebody who was qualified and said yes to them, then that paper would move up to a closer, for instance, and that person would call them back, usually requalify them to make sure that PR person wasn't just writing up some wood, right? If you've seen Boiler Room, you probably know that term. So it'd get requalified, and if it checked the box for that person, then a prospectus would go out. I'll give you a call tomorrow. As long as everything checks out and it is what I say it is, then we'll go ahead and get you involved. Is there any reason why you think that we can't do that? All right. So that's when that would all start. So this piece of paper is some qualifying questions. So as a salesperson, we would have had this close by on our desk. We would have had spent the time to memorize all this. And it's broken down into 3 sections here. The first is, do you have the resources to participate if you like what you see, right? So that's this part right here. Do you have the resources to participate if you like what you see? Great question, right? So we could reframe that in talking with buyers or sellers. by saying something like, do you have the resources to say yes if we find a property that fits your criteria? Do you have the ability to say yes if we have an acceptable offer present itself? Are you willing to say yes if we do have an acceptable offer on the table, right? So what I love is looking at all this old school hardcore sales stuff that we used to use and seeing how we can reinvent it uh, and position it so that you could use it, for instance, in real estate. So there are 5 questions that are kind of dig deeper questions to this. Do you have the resources to participate if you like what you see? If they said yes, here we go. We're going to ask these other questions. If they said no, we've got other issues, and that's a whole different call. I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So the first question we would ask, if they said, yeah, I have the resources to participate if I like what I see, great. So what do you do for a living? Right, that's something that you should be asking clients if you're working with them as a buyer or seller, just to know a little bit more about your clients, right? Next question is about how big is your investment portfolio? So, they'd already said yes, they were an accredited investor. But again, we want specifics. People lie. And when you ask another question, you get new information. And so, regardless of this person probably having already said that they were accredited, I'm still going to ask, how big is your investment portfolio? I would usually even go to the extent of, just how much would you say ballpark figure you have invested into the stock market right now? How much do you have invested into property? Break it down into categories. So what we could say right now, if we were trying to reposition that maybe to use with buyers and sellers, maybe we could say something like, instead of how big is your investment portfolio, maybe we could say something like, how much money do you have available to put down? Maybe we could ask something like, what is the least amount that you would be willing to accept, assuming it was all cash and a quick close? Again, you could do this all day long and make a game out of it, right? And just come up with a bunch of them and see which ones we want to keep. The next one is here, can you ballpark your net worth for me, right? So I already asked if they're an accredited investor. What that means, sir, is you have to have $1 million net worth or have made $300,000 a year consecutively over the last few years. Do you fit into that category? Yes, I do. Okay, fantastic, right? And the conversation would have went on, but at some point I'm going to get back to, I mentioned earlier, you have to be an accredited investor, just so I can have a little bit more information. Would you ballpark your net worth for me? Again, you don't have to be specific. And people would tell you, now on the NAEA sellers counseling interview, if you use that, there's a question that says, how much is left on the mortgage, right? Or is the home paid off? And so to me, that's kind of similar to here. What I see is people back in the day used to have a hard time asking somebody what their net worth was because they felt like they were prying and they didn't have a right to that information. I've seen the same thing from inside sales agents and real estate agents prospecting, is they feel they're prying or they don't have the right to ask that information about how much is left on the mortgage or if the home is paid off. And if somebody says, well, no, the home's not paid off, they feel like it's prying to say, so how much is left on the mortgage? But it's important information to know. And there are 2 things that are important about going through this process. One is the information you get, and the other is whether or not they're willing to answer and go along with you, right? Because if they're not willing to answer these questions, then I'd be willing to bet you're going to have a hard time with them being willing to sign any paperwork, to commit to work with you. You're going to have a hard time to get them to communicate or to follow through or to say yes to to submitting an offer or accepting one. So you want to make sure that you have somebody who is, what you might have said in the past is somebody that's controllable, and is willing to follow your direction. So again, there's 2 things that I'm looking for. There's the information, and also if I have somebody who's willing to answer the questions and take the time with me. If so, then I think we're on the same page. They understand it's a serious conversation. I understand that they're taking it seriously. So again, it's A, the information, and 2, do you have somebody who's willing to go through and answer the questions? If they tell me, hey man, I ain't answering any of that stuff, you just send it to me if you want, which we would oftentimes get. Often you'd get that. Well, great, have a great day. That's not how we operate, right? They just revealed themselves to us as not the person we wanted to work with. Again, we can choose who we want to work with. So the next question in this process is, how much capital do you see yourself being able to deploy? So if I'm asking him about the investment, I would have been asking, units are 250,000. If everything makes sense, do you think you could do 2 units or just one? That might be what I said. Or how much capital do you have available if this did make sense? So how would we reposition that? Maybe we could say something like, if you were to find the right property, what do you think is the upper end of your price range? Maybe we could say, if it was a seller, how quickly do you think you would be able to find the next place? Let's see, what else could we say? How much capital do you see yourself being able to deploy? So how much equity are you willing to negotiate? And I'm just making it up as I go along here. I'm not saying any of these are right. How much capital do you see yourself being able to deploy today? So I think with a buyer, it's fairly easy probably to position that. With a seller, I'm trying to think of, what would be the equivalent of capital. I mean, you could turn it into a motivation question. You could be like, one thing we would often say is with the real estate teams is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to sell the home? So maybe that could be the equivalent there. If you did have an acceptable offer, how motivated are you to sell the home immediately, maybe, right? Or how soon would you be willing to sell the home if we had an offer on the table? Something along those lines. The next question is, how much capital do you typically deploy in these investments? How much capital do you typically deploy in these investments? So, there's, what would I say there? How much capital do you typically deploy in these investments? How much time do you usually allot to make these kind of decisions is a good one, right? If you're talking to somebody, that's a good one. How much time do you usually allocate to make these kind of decisions? How much time do you think that you will need before you're ready to put the home on the market? How much time do you think that you need in order to tie up loose ends so that you can make the move? How much capital do you have to put down on the next property? How much capital do you have to leverage for your next home while we're waiting on this home to sell? A number of different things that you could probably do there. All right. By the way, back where it says, how big is your investment portfolio? That question, I think what I probably would ask is, do you have any other properties? Do you currently own or rent? Right? If I was talking to a buyer, if I was talking to somebody selling a home, I might ask, by the way, do you have any other properties, or is this the only one? All right, the next section here is, are you able to make business decisions in the next 2 weeks? Now, I'll tell you, our goal was to get on the phone tomorrow and get you closed, but it rarely happened, that one call close. So, it usually took 2 weeks, 3 or 4 phone calls. So are you able to make a decision in the next 2 weeks? So what would we say there if we were positioning it with somebody that we were speaking to about buying or selling a home? We could say, are you able to submit an offer if we find a home that you like within the next 2 weeks? If we were able, if we received an offer with somebody purchasing your home, would you be able to, do what you need to do to move out within a period of time? Have you thought about that? Right? If we did list your home and received an offer within the next few weeks, would you be willing to say yes? Something along those lines, we could say. All right. So the next question underneath that category is, do you make your own investment decisions? I mean, come on, just take investments out and do you make your own decisions? That's something that you should be asking in any situation. So do you make your own investment decisions, or do you need somebody else's permission to write this check? That's what it says here. Do you need somebody else's permission to write this check? What you might say is there anybody else involved in the purchase of the home? Is there anybody else that is on title as an owner of the home? Do we need to have anyone else there that would make the decision on whether or not to put the home on the market? What would hold you back from making a decision? That's a great one, right? I love that question. So that's the next one here. What would hold you back from making a decision? So what would keep you from putting your home on the market? Just so I know ahead of time, right? Assuming that we did find a home that met your criteria, is there anything that you can envision that would keep you from submitting an offer? So those are pretty easy ones to reposition. The next question here is, where is the money going to come from? Man, now it's getting real, right? So a guy told me he's accredited, told me how much his net worth is, told me kind of what his investment portfolio looks like, told me how much capital he has that he can deploy. Now I'm going to ask, so where exactly is that going to come from, right? Are you going to sell some stock, or is that liquid? Because I know if you're going to sell stock, it's T+3, trade date plus 3 days before you're going to get that money. So I know when we can write the check or wire there. Or if it's a liquid, then let's get her done right now, right? So where's the money coming from? Same thing if I was speaking to a buyer and I'd asked them how much in funds do they have available to put down? Where would that money be coming from? If they tell me I have $10,000, where would that money be coming from? Do you currently have that in the bank, or would you need to move some things around? Right. So again, choosing who we want to work with. I want to work with people who have the money. They can tell me where it's going to come from. Everything checks out. The next one is this money earmarked for speculation? Right. So a lot of these investments back in the day were speculative, bottom line. And so I'd have to say something like, listen, Jeff, as good as the returns potentially are in this project, there's also a chance that, we could lose everything. So I need you to be prepared for that. And if that did happen, I need it to be an amount that wouldn't take any food off your table or cause you to not be able to meet any of your obligations. So is this an amount that, you'd be comfortable with if worst case scenario, things didn't go well? That's maybe what that would sound like. In this case, is this money earmarked for speculation? What we're trying to determine with this question is that money like what we would consider a conservative money, like it's earmarked for, more predictable, right? So most people would have 20% or so, let's say, of their portfolio allocated to high risk opportunities. And so we would want to know if somebody says, yeah, I got some money available, but they're not telling us that money is part of the that money is part of the fixed investment or a conservative low yield, low risk investment, right? Then when they found out this was speculative or something, it's all going to go sideways. So that's the context on why we would ask that question. What would be a good way to position that, maybe if we were talking to somebody in real estate? So is the money earmarked for speculation? What I might ask is, that down payment money that you mentioned that you had in 10,000 that you mentioned is in your bank account. You don't have to move it around. Was there anything else that you were planning on using that money for? I don't want to find out that, oh, by the way, he was paying for a $3,000 vacation. So actually there's only 7 there, or, he's trying to buy a new car and that money's competing, right? We're competing. The home we're purchasing is competing with something else that, that money may go towards. So we just want to know all up front, is that money allocated for anything else? If it's a seller, perhaps we could say, the funds from the sale of the home, is that what they plan on using to purchase the next home? Do they have any specific plans to utilize the equity that they monetize when they sell the home? Who knows what it might be. For a seller, you can play the game and figure it out. Get your team around and figure it out. Holler at me and I'll get you this PDF and you can figure it out. All right, the next one under this, are you able to make your business decision in 2 weeks? Category is, will the risk alone stop you from investing? Yeah, I probably would have done that differently. Now, I don't like that question, but I get what we were trying to do. Will the risk alone stop you from investing? Basically, what we're trying to do is say, hey, buddy, this is a high risk investment. So if that's going to keep you from moving forward, you can let me know right now and save us both some time. As opposed to me trying to act like, oh man, this is a guaranteed sure slam dunk deal, just to have them get the prospectus tomorrow and see all the regulatory disclosures that require us to say how high risk it is, and goes, oh man, I thought this thing was going to be, safe as Coca-Cola. And it's all just a bunch of wasted time. And then you get upset because you're trying to close somebody who isn't the person you should have been concentrating on in the first place. So, now you're pissed off. It changes your confidence level and your attitude for the next person, and all kinds of other things are impacted. That's why we want to choose who we want to work with and just get stuff out on the table so that you know ahead of time. So what we might do, what will the risk alone stop you from investing? So, what we might say, is there anything that could come up in the next few weeks that you think would cause you to not list the home? Is there anything that you can see that might happen that would cause you to have to make a change in plans as far as moving out of your lease and purchasing, whatever that might be, right? So that's how I might reposition that. Will the risk alone stop you from it? And then it has in parentheses here, if you can't stick this money in an ashtray and light it on fire and it won't impact your way of life, then don't send it to me. Like I was saying, we're making sure that everybody could handle whatever the impact might be. All right, so the last section here is if you're serious about this. So this is good. This is where you're kind of trial closing. This could be, the stage in your world where maybe you're setting the appointment. You got the appointment set and you're just about to get off and say, have a great day. There's a number of different scenarios where these trial closes or these techniques could be used. The first one here is, if you're serious about this, I know you're a busy guy. I am too. So let's be definitive, right? So what we were trying to do there is control the time frame and not be vague about when and what something was going to happen. So, if you said, why don't you give me a call back in a few days and we can talk about it, I would be like, well, unfortunately, I'm pretty busy. My calendar fills up quickly, like I'm sure yours does. Let's go ahead and secure a spot now that would work. And if we need to reschedule, we can always do so. I treat my calendar just like a doctor. I only have a certain amount of time available to talk to people like yourself. So let's go ahead and make it for a specific time on Tuesday. You can let me know. The reality is, if we don't set a specific time, you'll get busy, I'll get busy, and it won't end up getting done. So let's go ahead and set the time, right? Any one of those could be a way to reposition that. The next one is, let's schedule a time to review the prospect together so I can answer your questions, right? So that would be that prospectus that I mentioned that's going to be hitting their doorstep tomorrow at 3 via FedEx. We're going to schedule a time to review that. Just give me a call tomorrow evening. I'm around all day. No, absolutely not. If you have somebody you're talking to and they say, yeah, give me a call, next month or something, and we'll see what our plans are then. You want to get more specific. Oh, yeah, everything sounds great. Why don't you just give us a call back in a few days and we'll give you an answer. Might as well consider those, to be on the way out as far as you not closing those deals. So we want to try to maintain a little bit more control. So we'll try to schedule a time. In this case, it says, let's schedule a time to review the prospect together so I can answer your questions. Maybe we might say something like, let's schedule a time when both of you are available so that I can answer your questions. Let's schedule a time when you can come by the office and I can talk to you more about our smart home buying strategy. And at that point in time, I can not only get the information together on the property that you mentioned, but we can take a look at other properties that might be a fit as well. Right. Getting them to the office. In that case, if you follow the NAEA expert advisor methodology, we're trying to get those buyers to an appointment first where we can sit down and qualify them and make sure that they are a person we want to work with, and vice versa, before we go running out, to be on demand, so to speak. And then the third one is, if I'm not able to reach you, then I can't promise that your unit won't get sold to somebody else. Some of this just still makes me laugh. And I remember, being scared shitless to say this stuff when I was a rookie, and then being amazed when you would learn to say it and it would work. Because some of it sounds cheesy. You probably are saying to yourself right now, man, if somebody told me that, I'd tell them, fine, take a hike, buddy. Right? You didn't wake up today expecting to invest in an oil well anyhow. But if you're talking to the right people, you are hopefully talking to somebody who has to buy a home or needs to sell their home. So you've got that going for you. If I'm not able to reach you, then I can't promise that your unit won't get sold to someone else. So how, what we were doing there is trying to create scarcity and urgency, right? So I only have a few units available. I just want to let you know that if I'm not able to reach you, I've got other investors that are fighting to get those positions, and I can't promise that there'd be anything left for you. what I can do is I can send you over a confirmation if you want, and you can go ahead and sign that and put the last four of your social there. And I'll go ahead and have the team start a file for you and secure your position until you can move the funds around. I'll go ahead and send that over to you. Can you get that back to me immediately? Right. And then that'd be a trial close. 90% of the time, if I could get somebody to fill that confirmation out, they'd end up following through. And the confirmation didn't mean anything. I didn't go, it was nothing. It was just a step to have them take to provide evidence that they were real. All right. So how would we position that? If I'm not able to reach you, I can't promise that your home, that it won't get sold to someone else. Maybe, if we don't put your home on the market right now, I can't promise that there'll be the same percentage of qualified buyers in the future, right? I'm sure you all are aware that it looks like interest rates are going to go up. And so that's going to change the profile for any buyers, depending on where you're at in the market. That's going to affect one way or another, or it's going to change, right, the pool of people that can afford your home, and those that are going to say yes to even moving out of that apartment and looking to purchase. They may say, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. So, you can't promise always that there's going to be an opportunity like this where you can almost ask your price, right? Where you can almost name your price. You can't promise that it'll be like that forever. You can't promise that, inventory levels will remain as low as they are. If there are a number of homes that were to come to the market, then obviously there'd be more competition for your home. So that's why I would suggest that rather than waiting until March or April to put your home on the market, we take advantage of the low inventory that's out there right now and the high number of qualified buyers. I don't know. I'm just having fun now. But, maybe that's some way you could do that. So, this is fun. I like looking at this stuff. I got a whole pile of this old stuff from the investment world. And, you can reposition just about all of it if you're creative so that you can use it in the conversations that you have. And in any industry, some of you have been in other industries and there were methods that worked in those industries that with a fresh look, you might be able to use today. So, that's my kind of takeaway is find something that, works in another industry and maybe there's a chance we can, use it to work for us here. Anyhow, I appreciate those of you that were on this week to share your tips. Noel Kennedy, Chip Barkle, Ben, I hope you're feeling better. If you're watching or you see this later, you'll be on next week, I'm sure. And we have a few other people that will be on next week to share their tips. If you've got something that you're an expert at and it's something that you think that you could teach new agents to do and duplicate, then send me a message and we'll have you on as a branded agent professor. But everybody have a great weekend and we will see you next week.